If you were live, yeah. We're okay. Sorry, we're live. All right. Where are we? We do need a resolution to authorize the outside counsel to execute any documents associated with accepting the settlement from the 3 prescription drug distributors. Do I have a motion from the committee members regarding this matter? Supervisor Conover, thank you, and I'll second. Do I still have 1, 2, 3, 4? Any further discussion? Anyone wants to have in public before we take a vote on this? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed to the settlement on the opioid. Okay, that carries. Thank you. All right, Mr. Terwilliger, thank you for your report. Anything? Oh, you need to go over your budget. Yes, go ahead.
Budget, please. Thank you. On this one, we did attach a budget summary, which kind of highlights some of the matters of the county attorney's budget on this. The total increase in the budgetary amount from 2021 adopted budget to the 2022 departmental request is approximately a 2.93% increase from the 2021 adopted to the 2022 requested. There's a large outlier in the amended 2021 budget, and that's related to employee expenses that are involved in a matter that's in litigation now. Other matters in the budget, we've done a few things like decrease the supply budget request from 9,000 to 7,000 because we don't really buy as many things. The postage, decreasing that request from 12,500 to 10,000. That's a matter where we've just made it far more efficient in the tax foreclosure process. That's where the vast majority of the postage expenses from the county attorney's office come from. And that process, we've made it a lot more efficient over the last couple of years or so by not mailing letters to people who are deceased and finding out who actually does own the property and making that whole process a lot more efficient. So the people and entities getting notified are actually those who do have an ownership interest in the property and not former owners and former mortgage holders against properties. We have done an increased request for membership dues, increased from 500 to 1,500. That would be for certain legal associations or fees like that. And that's just in anticipation of 3 attorneys instead of 2 in the county attorney office for the next fiscal year. Data processing and internet fees, a small decrease in that as things will go. There's an old contract with Abacus that will be ending in September of 2022, and that'll be the end of that contract. We would not seek to renew that in any way whatsoever. We have requested an increase in legal fees for outside counsel work from 65,000 to 75,000. And that's due to the fact that we have been using outside counsel more, especially this year again, as we are down in short staff. And the $75,000 increase is just to have that there in case we need it to bring in outside counsel for certain matters, certain specialized legal matters like labor and other things like that. We've also made a request for a part-time legal assistant position on that one as an additional support staff to help the attorneys and to help the confidential secretary on that one. And that would be a part-time position contemplated at this point for the 2022 budget. And that really kind of concludes a brief summary of the budget. Are there any questions on the county attorney's budget request for 2022?
No, doesn't look like it. Thank you, Mr. Terwilliger. You've done a nice job on the budget.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will ask, not today, Robert. I know I've asked you again about the PFOA litigation and you were doing some more research. So we'll just look for an update at a future meeting.
Definitely. I'm continuing to look into that. That's definitely not a closed book. Continuing to work on that one and see what we should do with that.
Great, thank you. Okay, over to Miss Allen. Amanda, if you could give us your agenda items.
So 5A is on the resolution tracking report, and that does not, that did not make it into your agenda. So I will email that out to everyone after this meeting. And if you have questions, you can just give me a call. On the 2022 budget request, if you look at the first page for and attachments for 5B, there's a summary of the budget increases that I've requested. So we have quite a few budgets, most of them transferred over, but you can see the highlights here on what was changed. So we did increase in the legislative board budget supplies by 5,000. That was because we ran short, mostly because of increased copying. Excuse me, and paper costs. So we did increase by the amount we had to come in and ask for earlier this year. Under the clerk's legislative board budget, we didn't have a travel, education, and conference code there. We've always used the legislative board code. But we did use that this year, and we increased that by $20,000 so that we could keep funding from mileage in our regular travel separate from NACO travel. And the medical exams and coroner's fees, the coroner's budget is consistently short. Over the last 3 years, we've been coming back and asking for money. So this year we increased that request by 50,000. We still may have to come back later in 2022 to ask for more money, but that's an unknown. So it'll at least give us a little leg up. And then under municipal association dues, the NISAC dues increased this year from 10,946 to 11,273. So that's in the budget there. There are also some salary changes requested, and those are listed out. That's moving mine and Sarah's up to our increments to meet our years of service. For Sam, we are asking to change her title from the Senior Legislative Office Specialist to a Second Deputy Clerk, and that comes with a reclassification and code. And then for Molly and Sarah, Molly and Leslie, we were requesting to move them from their second to fourth increments based on years of service. Any questions on any of those?
I don't see any questions.
This is,
Supervisor Conover?
we take questions on either budget. But
Which one you got?
I just was going to say that I think any comments regarding the positions of the supervisors, I think will probably get taken care of within our own process in terms of what exists and who gets compensated and why. And I don't know if we need to tackle that today. I could see that, oh yeah, I agree with that. And also, just something that it occurred to me, we don't need to deal with it today, but perhaps going into next year, it should be dealt with by government ops or the appropriate committee. And that is, there's a time when health insurance costs but a few $1,000s, and it was afforded to county supervisors as a benefit. Well, those days are long gone. And I think there needs to be a discussion as to what benefits are offered to county supervisors and to what degree. Do we offer health benefits to supervisors? Do we offer health benefits to supervisors and their spouses? Do we offer family health care? I think that, at least in my time on the board, that's never been an item that's come up for discussion. And I think that it needs to, we need to reflect on that a little bit. What's reasonable and fair as a benefit to the elected supervisors. But again, I don't think that's a discussion for today, but I think that's something in terms of budget that needs to be discussed at some point in time. Because I think that legislation goes way back. I don't think it's been addressed since it was originally adopted, and I can't even, I don't remember any longer when it was adopted, but it was quite some time ago. But other than that, I can support the budget.
Any other questions or comments for Amanda? Okay, thank you, Amanda. For me, that's it for you. Good. Okay, good job. Okay, we did auditor. That was number 6. We already did that. Okay, Trish. So Ms. Nenninger, on the personnel officer agenda items, she does have a request here to fill a vacant position due to resignation. I think we can take that unless anyone has any questions for Trish, who I'm sure is around.
I'm right here.
Thank you. Could I have a motion to, do we need a motion to fill this position? It's always, thank you. Supervisor Driscoll, making that motion to fill the vacant position due to resignation. Could I have a second? Supervisor Garrity, thank you. Any discussion or questions for Trish? Nope. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Thank you. Okay, Trish. For your budget review, what would you like us to?
Just a couple points for my budget. For salaries this year, our staff salaries and my salaries are management confidential, so that's a determination of the budget officer and the administrator. For the salaries for my Saturday test administrators, we have a few people who are very dedicated and show up continuously to help us hold our exams. Particularly during COVID this winter into next year, we anticipate that we're going to need them quite a bit because we are under conditions that we have to have everybody 6 feet apart so we can have a lot fewer people in a room. So we need more exam rooms. Washington County and Saratoga County pay $20 an hour, very close there too. Our staff is getting $18 an hour right now. They're a huge asset to us, so I'm requesting that they get $20 an hour for the number of hours they work on our exams. That's one. The second item that I highlight for you is under contractual services. There was an increase. I increased medical fees for $4,500. I did try to eliminate some dollars elsewhere to curtail that to some extent. I'm not sure what that number ultimately is going to be. It represents an increase in the testing. We are going to be required by new legislation for the police exams. Right now, we in civil service pay for the medical exams that have to be held, and they're looking at shifting psychological exams to be part of the civil service process rather than just part of the vetting process by the agencies. Additionally, there's some questions as to how they're going to implement the review of good moral character for our entry-level patrol. And this covers both the City of Glens Falls police officers and Warren County patrol officers. For next year, for 2022, the only place we'll see that increase for any appointments would be the City of Glens Falls, because it's only going to apply to new exam lists, and we just held their exam in September. So their appointments will be off a new list, so we would see the increases there. So we'll have a better idea next year, but I thought I should put some money in there. I tried to off balance it where I can, but we're looking at an increase of about $4,250. And those are the real changes.
Any questions? Any questions or comments for the personnel officer on her budget? Okay, Trish, nobody has any
Thank you.
questions. Thank you. Good job. Anything further you need to bring to committee
No, I'm good, thanks.
today? Okay, thank you. Okay, that's that one. All right, we are to Administrator Moore.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would, before we go into executive session, I'd just like to mention that due to we are in a bit of a spike on COVID for the past 2 months, as everybody knows from seeing the numbers every day. I participated in a call as well as the chairwoman with, it was led by Mark Bean. There were others in the community, business leaders and whatnot. And the nature of the call was, should we all try to get on the same page and similar messaging as it pertains to encouraging people to get vaccines and encouraging people to wear masks. And we have encouraged people to wear masks even when the state lifted the mandates in mid-June. We've our refrain has sort of been, you think about the people that are in your immediate circle and what you need to do to protect them. But that being said, we decided that it would be worthwhile to repost signs in the municipal center encouraging mask use, to put out mask stations, to put out sanitizer stations, and just to put it more in people's view than it necessarily has been since June when the state lifted all of these mandates. We've always encouraged mask use, and the thought was just getting it in front of people and getting people mindful of it again is going to help. And I have seen a lot more mask wearing since last week. I did want to read a memo that we sent out to the staff on this subject. So we started, thank you for all you're doing and all you have done to help Warren County in the fight against COVID-19. As you know from following the daily number of new cases, we've experienced a spike in August and September. Much of this is no doubt due to the Delta variant, and much is also due to the fact that people are interacting in public in a manner that's far closer to normal than how people were interacting last year. This, of course, is because in mid-June, the state lifted most of the COVID mandates that applied last year. The spike that we've been experiencing recently is not quite as large as the spike that we all endured from November 2020 through January. And we're also fortunate that during this spike, as opposed to the last one, the large majority of Warren County adult residents are vaccinated. So although we are in a spike, it's controlled compared to a situation that we went through over the holidays last year when there were no vaccinations. Nevertheless, it's important to reiterate that COVID is still dangerous and it can be deadly. We should all continue taking precautions against COVID. Even those of us who are vaccinated can still get COVID. The vaccine is highly effective, but it is not infallible. Please be mindful not only of your own health, but also the health of your coworkers, those in your personal circle, including your family, and children who are not yet approved to be vaccinated. Protecting yourself against COVID is the same as protecting your coworkers, your loved ones, and unvaccinated children in the community from COVID. The most effective protection aside from the vaccine continues to be mask wearing and social distancing. Even if you are vaccinated, we strongly urge you to considering wearing a mask when you are indoors and in close proximity to others, especially when you're not in your office or at your workstation. We also strongly encourage you to wear a mask when you are in common areas like bathrooms and hallways that you share with the departments that serve vulnerable populations, including public health, Office for the Aging, and DSS. We will be posting signage in common areas of county buildings carrying this message, and we will be placing disposable masks and hand sanitizers around our facilities for those in need. As always, we encourage you to please stay home if you are sick. Thank you for being mindful of the continuing danger posed by COVID and respectful to all your coworkers. Please communicate with your supervisor should you have your concerns, and feel free to reach out to county leadership to share your ideas and thoughts with us at any time. This memo went out to all employees on September 23rd, which is a week ago today. It was well received. As I mentioned, we were seeing more masks around the facilities. And the DPW sign shop made up some new signs. Those are going up. They may already be going up today. Those will be up by the end of the week. We have a mask station right there, and there's another one out in the hall, and we have them posted at doorways. We have bathrooms equipped, and we're going to keep up on this. And again, if it's in front of people, maybe there's more mindfulness, and we can all do a better job.
I think it was a good reminder out to people just to keep heads up on it. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that while we're encouraging people to get vaccinations, and our health department has been great about that. Anecdotally, the staff seems to be vaccinated at a pretty high rate. So I'm very glad about that. Although I think that we can continue encouraging that as people are able to, and make a little bit more headway there. Yes.
I have a
Supervisor Gay.
question. Ryan, I think you stated a Holiday Inn last night. If somebody's had COVID, are they less likely to get it and give it to somebody if they've already had it once?
I think the science on that is that when you have COVID, you have antibodies for a certain period of time, and then the antibodies can go away. They're saying that if you get the vaccine, the antibodies will last longer. So the natural immunity that you would develop as a result of having COVID and recovering is they say is not as strong as the immunity you develop from the vaccine. Yeah.
Yes, Supervisor Conover.
Thank you. Ryan, I know municipalities, I assume counties are required by law now to have a 90-day, I think it's 90-day, period of supply of their personal protection devices, disinfectant, masks, whatever. I know in Bolton, have that, and we have somebody assigned to making sure that that inventory is maintained at whatever that level is. I think it's 3 months. Does that rule still, does that also apply to the county, do you know?
I'm honestly not familiar with the rule. We'll have to do some research on it, but I can tell you, we do have a stockpile of PPE here. The inventory is maintained by emergency services as well as public health, and where they're authorized to replenish those inventories.
Yeah, I think the idea being because the experience with the rush
Right.
to the supply, it just drained the
Right.
supply, and we didn't have access to materials. And so they incorporated into the rules for some. I don't know about the counties, but I think it's a good policy anyway for us to have some supply of all of those items.
We just got a large shipment that was for schools, which was great to be able to distribute those. And I think Ms. Mason has been doing a great job keeping track of our inventory. It was a little hectic at the very beginning of the pandemic, but she has a really tight handle on all of that now. So if you have any questions, I'm sure she can answer them.
Yeah.
Yes, Supervisor
I'd
Garrity.
just like to reiterate what Ron said. I think each municipality had to come up with a plan and a written plan. So we have a written plan too. And we have our inventories of those supplies also.
You think we do too, Tammy?
Yes, it was called the Public Employers Health Emergency Plan that we had developed, and we did that, and Warren County did that with Anne Marie was involved, and Amy and
Emery.
and Jackie Figueroa from HR.
Okay, public health insurance, public health
Employers
employers
Health, yep,
plan.
emergency health plan, yep.
Okay,
It's coming back to me now. We actually adopted that. The Board of Supervisors adopted that. Thank you,
Yes.
Tim.
okay,
Yeah.
great. So I think we're in good shape on that. Very good. Do you want to do the census number thing, or do you want to do executive session?
Pleasure of the committee. I'm happy to jump into census now if you'd like.
Sure. Yep.
Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't log into the Zoom and I forgot I need to share my screen. But in the meantime, if you flip to in your agenda packet, I have all the files printed out that we need to look at. And it's under, those red headings up top. It'll be under item 8B. Let me log into the Zoom here. Tammy, get ready. And I'm turning my audio off. Yeah, maybe we can kill the lights in the back if it's easier to see. Thanks, perfect. Okay. No interference, right?
No, sounds good.
Great.
Not
All
yet.
right, I'm going to request to share my screen.
All right, has everyone got their math caps on?
Okay,
Here we go.
there it is. Now, it's probably going to be difficult for some in the room to see those numbers. It's difficult for me from here, but I really wanted you just to be able to follow my cursor, and you have all the numbers in front of you. So what you're looking at right now is the current weighted vote. And this is, so let me back up. What we're required to do, if you go back to 1967, there's a case called Iannucci in New York State courts. And Washington County and Saratoga County had their weighted vote scheme in those days thrown out because they couldn't properly demonstrate that it was fair from a one person, one vote perspective. And there have been other cases, and Robert's done a lot of reading of various case laws where this has happened in other counties, where for whatever reason a county's weighted vote is challenged, it's either upheld or it's thrown out. But the moral of the story is that if our weighted vote was ever challenged, we would have to demonstrate mathematically that it's a fair system. And the standard that we've utilized in the past is the Banzhaf Power Index. And that's also the standard I know that's been utilized in Saratoga County. I'm not sure about other counties. But this is how the Banzhaf Power Index applies into what we currently do with our weighted vote. Let me maybe make this view a little bigger. Zoom to 200, see if that gets it to. Yeah, it's in the packet. It doesn't really work. I'm sorry. Okay, so this is with the 2010 population. The 2010 census came out 10 years ago, towards the end of 2011. And the Board of Supervisors, what you have to do in order to reapportion the weighted vote according to the new population figures is you need to pass a local law adopting what each supervisor's weighted vote is. The other portion of that local law is there's a threshold in there and it currently says that if each supervisor is entitled to represent up to 5,580 people. So in terms of looking at this issue this year, we got two factors. We need to update the weighted vote to the 2020 census. And we also need to evaluate that threshold because that threshold is a matter of local law. The local law is in your packet. If you don't change the threshold, then the Queensbury population has grown to an extent where it would dictate having 6 supervisors. If you want to keep Queensbury at 5 supervisors, you need to change the threshold, make the threshold larger. So that's the foundational issue here is what do you do with that threshold? Do you leave it the same or do you change it? And then after you do that, what do the weighted votes need to be based on making them proportional to the new census numbers? So let me walk you through if our current weighted vote was challenged, here's what we would have to show in court. And then I'll take you through the 2 potentially new scenarios. So this column here that I've highlighted is the population. These are the official population statistics from 2010 census. The reason Queensbury is 0.2 is we've taken the total of 27,901 and we've divided it by 5. So each person has 0.2. That gets to the last whole number. So that was the official population of every town. Then what I did here is I just told you what proportion they are. So Bolton has 0.0354 ratio of the entire population. It's just this number divided by the total for everybody. Now, what we do here, you look at Saratoga County, their weighted vote is equivalent to the whole number population that they represent, or at least it was when I was there. What we've done here is we've converted it to 1,000 so that we have 1,000 total weighted votes. So that column does that. That's the conversion factor. So it takes essentially this number here and it multiplies it by 1,000 to translate this into a system that gets you up to 1,000 weighted votes. Then you round it. So anything that has 0.5 and up gets rounded up. Anything below 0.5 gets rounded down. So 35.39 is rounded down to 35. Here's an example where it would get rounded up. Mr. McDevitt's district, 56.7 gets rounded up to 57. So this column here, those rounded numbers, those are the current weighted votes that you all use, and they add up to 1,000. Now, what we do here, this is a program that Mike Colvin runs that was programmed years ago in IT. It takes so it takes all 20 of you. You can either vote yes or you can vote no, because anything other than a yes is a no. If it's an abstain or if it's an absence or whatever, there's only 2 ways to vote. It takes every single combination there possibly could be of supervisors voting yes or no. That's this number down at the bottom. When you have 20 supervisors, there's 1,048,576 combinations of votes. Then the computer program looks at every one of those combinations with questions being decided at 501 votes. And it looks at the number of, out of all of those possible combinations, which ones decide a question in the affirmative. So there's 522,731 instances in which a voting combination that could possibly come up on this 20-member board results in the question passing. Then this is what we have to do with that. The computer program looks at all 522,731 questions passing scenarios. And it says, goes through each one of those scenarios and says, if Ron Conover changes from a yes to a no, does Ron Conover swing the question to the negative? In other words, does Ron Conover have a swing vote? It does the same thing with Peter McDevitt. If Peter McDevitt in this scenario changes from a yes to a no, does he swing the question to where it doesn't pass anymore? It goes through and does that with every single one of you. And that generates this column here, swing votes. So out of 522,731 scenarios where the question passes, if Ron Conover changes from a yes to a no 57,835 times, he's going to swing that to the negative, and he's going to cause that question to fail all on his own. So that's the number that each of you have, where you have the ability to do that all on your own, where you can swing a question and you can decide the question. And all of those numbers all totaled up is 1,680,990 swing votes. Everybody with me so far? The next column is how the Banzaf power is calculated. So it takes Ron Conover's 57,835 swing votes divided by the total number of swing votes that everybody has. So Ron has the ability to be the decider on a question 3.44% of the time, compared to the ability that the rest of you have, and so on. Queensbury supervisors, as you would expect, because they have the largest weighted vote, they have more of an opportunity to determine a question all on their own. They can do that 8.64% of the time, each of them. Then what we do is we compare it to population that each of you represent. And all I did here in this column is I pulled it over from here. So the portion of the population that you represent, which is here, is expressed as a percentage. And what we're supposed to be able to do is demonstrate that your voting power, which is your ability to all on your own swing a vote, is proportional, or is approximate to the population that you represent. And that's how we can satisfy in court that our weighted vote system satisfies one man, one vote. So this column here, with your ability to swing something all on your own, ought to be similar to this column here, the percentage of the population that you represent. So I took the difference here. I took your voting power minus your population, and this is a differential. And you can see it's very, very, very close. I took the supervisor currently who is quote unquote the most underrepresented. So Andrea in Johnsburg, she has the ability to swing a vote 3.54% of the time. And she represents a slightly higher population, 3.64%. So her differential is a negative 0.11%. The supervisors in the opposite direction in the positive direction are the Queensbury supervisors. They all currently have 0.15% higher voting power than the population they represent. And then what we did down here, to take the highest positive and the lowest negative, and you take the spread between the two of them, 0.25%. That's a pretty representative system. I think if our current weighted vote was ever challenged in court, we present this and we survive a challenge.
What did the lawsuit, you may have already say this, did the litigation from years ago talk about a spread that was acceptable?
That's the tricky part of this. The Supreme Court has never come down and said, this is the mathematical formula that you need to use in order to prove that you're representative. So what you instead have is a bunch of lower court rulings, state Court of Appeals rulings, where they're essentially looking at, like Rockland County was challenged in one of them, and they look at the way Rockland County does their math, and the court will determine in that case whether or not their spread is constitutional. And so basically the precedent in that case says Rockland County, you got to do it this way. There's another case with Delaware County where the precedent in that one says Delaware County, you got to do it this way. So it really, there is no standard math that is mandated as this is the way to do it. And this is the spread that you need to be within at the end of the day. It's the way these cases have worked through. And Robert, you can speak to if you think I'm off base on this, but we talked about it Friday. And the way this works through is each challenge to each county is going to be unique to some respect.
Yeah, this is definitely a challenge. Would be much simpler if we had legislative districts that had the same amount of people in each one. All right, so carry us forward. That's
Okay.
all based on 2010.
That's all based on 2010.
Just show us how this works
Okay.
currently. Okay.
Now, the
which we're
first
familiar
scenario I gave you is here's with the 2020 population. If you don't change, if you make the decision not to change that threshold, that 5,580, these are all the new population statistics. Queensbury now has 29,169, which if you divide it by the threshold is going to give you 5 and change. So it dictates another Queensbury at-large supervisor. So you got the town supervisor and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 at-large supervisors. This column is the population. This column is the proportion of the population. The math is all the same here. This column converts it to the 1,000 that we like to use. Here's where it gets a little bit tricky because of rounding. When you round these using the same rounding rules, you're going to total up to 1,001 instead of 1,000. So under this system, we would now have 1,001 total weighted votes. The question still passes with 501. And the reason we do it I wanted to be fair on the rounding. Rather than arbitrarily take one away from a supervisor because we wanted to get to 1,000 even number, just leave the rounding where it ought to be and have a total of 1,001 instead of 1,000. I thought that was the fairest way to do it.
Oh my.
So Mike ran these numbers through his system. This generated how many swing votes everybody would have. The Banzhaf power is calculated the same way. And by the way, you now have, because you've added another supervisor, you now have 2,097,152 combinations. And you have questions being decided at 501, and you have winning combinations that are now 1,048,576. So that's why if you compare how many swing votes Bolton has in this model to how many they have under the current model, that's why it's greater, because there's double the voting combinations because you've added another supervisor. So this now is the number of swing votes. This calculates the percentage of the time that each of you can swing. This compares to your current proportion of the population. And here's your new differentials. So if you don't adjust that threshold and you add a 6th supervisor for Queensbury, it ends up with Supervisor Driscoll is negative 0.09%, and the Queensbury supervisors are positive 0.08%. So your new spread has gone down from 0.25% to 0.16%. And this, again, I think this is very, very representative, and I think we would survive any court challenge if we were challenged on this this formulation. Back to the foundational question here. In the local law, do you want to change the threshold or do you not want to change the threshold? So rather than, we're trying to give you the information that you need so that that decision is made with all the math that's behind it. So here's that scenario. If you decide you would like to keep Queensbury at 5 supervisors, we will need to adjust the threshold upwards. I suggest 5,835, which is the new Queensbury population divided by 5, and you add 1. Just so that we're compliant. And this is how it would work out. Again, you got your 4 at-large Queensbury here. Everybody else's weighted votes, by the way, stay the same because it's just a matter of taking Queensbury's total weighted vote and distributing it in this scenario among 6 supervisors and in this scenario among 5 supervisors. So again, due to rounding, it adds up in this scenario to 1,002. Questions then are decided at 502. So Mike ran these numbers through the system. There's the number of everybody's swing votes in this scenario. There's their Banzap power. We're back to, by the way, and the reason these numbers have declined again is because with only 20 supervisors, we're back to only having 1,048,576 combinations and 522,737 winning combinations. So there's your new Banzap power under this scenario. There's the percentage of the population that everybody represents. And here's your differentials. Again, it's Glens Falls Ward 5 that is a minus 0.12%. And again, it's Queensbury that are the highest pluses. They're plus 0.17%. So the bottom line calculation there, the current system, 0.25% spread. This would have 0.29% spread. It's statistically insignificant. It's a very, very representative weighted vote. So the math, in my opinion, doesn't dictate which one we necessarily choose. It tells us that either scenario is going to hold up to a challenge under one man, one vote, and that either scenario appears to be a pretty representative scenario of the population that you all represent. And that's a good thing and it's a bad thing because you don't necessarily have math that'll dictate the decision you make. It's going to be a decision that you all feel is proper with respect to whether or not you want to add another supervisor to this board.
So thank you for that presentation. What I would like to do just today is to go through the math if anyone has any questions. I don't think we need to make any firm policy choice today. We do have to make it soon, but I don't think it needs to be today. I want to make, this is the first time we've gone through the math and been presented with the two scenarios as to the 5 versus the 6 Queensbury, and just looking at those numbers and understanding from a mathematical situation, it's not really a statistically significant difference overall on the board. I will say I really, just quick, Frank, I mean, if there's anything we could do about the rounding situation to get us back down to 1,000 points, I mean, I'm just terrible at math and I can picture myself like thinking a year from now, we're in some tight vote and I have to think, is that 1,001 votes? You know, majority, I guess you're saying the 501 would still be the threshold for a
Yeah, I mean, the way you would handle that really is you have 1,002. If you want to get it down to 1,000, you would take the two supervisors that are closest to the 0.5, which looks like it would be Johnsburg and Stony Creek. And rather than round the two of them up, you'd round them down. And I didn't feel that that was the right thing to do.
Oh, poor Frank. Okay. Yes, Supervisor Thomas, you had your hand up.
Yes, I do have a question.
Yes.
Why is it that the city of Glens Falls has 5 supervisors when their population is only 14,830? And your threshold for Queensbury is 5,835 or 5,880? Why is that? Is it because they're a city or is that?
I
what's
think
the reason?
I think the answer to that question is probably that the city decided to do it that way. Mike, do you have an
Well,
insight into that?
That was set up in their charter.
Yeah.
I guess the way it would work, Frank, is if we had less, which I guess we'd still have the same total number of weighted votes.
Yeah, I understand
They'd be
that.
squeezed together among fewer supervisors.
But the fact is you have 2 more supervisors, you know, at committee meetings and stuff. So can make a difference, you know.
It does make a
Thanks.
difference because our committee meetings do not go by weighted vote and neither do our behind the scenes negotiations. 20 supervisors is a lot of people.
So it seems like to me that if you're going to base Queensbury on the 5,580, then everybody should be based on that to some degree.
You know,
I don't know that we have the ability to change the Glens Falls supervisors. Hold on, Ron, I see your hand. Hold on. Okay. Could you, Ryan, could you unshare your thing? If everyone's okay with
Oh,
that?
I'm sorry.
Then
Yeah.
we can see the other supervisors again. And I'll come to you in just a second, Craig. Supervisor Conover first.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of this board, I mean, this is my second decennial census where we've had to do this. Last decennial census, population went up. We may have been the only community. The population went up. I have to go back and check. Our weighted vote increased slightly. Others went down. This is a process that we have to go through. It's we have to do it every 10 years. It's I think a very straightforward process, and you know how we handle this, I think, is how we've handled it in all of the decennial census. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me that the number that you mentioned, Ryan, was a calculation based upon backing to 20 supervisors. I tend to like that scenario better than I do going to 21, but if it's the will of the board to go to 21, then we'll go to 21. That's just the way it is. We did it the last time. In fact, I think we did it without an awful lot of fanfare. It's just a mathematical process that goes into legislation. That's the end of it. And as far as the whether we passed a majority at 1,000 or 1,002 or whatever it is, I mean, that's just a mathematical number. That's not. Then we know what carries the day, and that's the end of that. So I don't think we need to take away. Now, in the last decennial census, I think Bolton got up to like 0.3 or so. I forget what was on the screen. We were rounded down to 35, and we accepted that at the time. That's the way it's done. Yeah. And the same thing with rounding up. So the community that was rounded up got rounded up, and so. But if today we're looking at, I mean, I would feel comfortable with that scenario. I think I prefer to stay at 20. I prefer to adjust the number if it doesn't affect the numbers, but I'm not sure that I'm averse to anything really at this stage, other than just getting through the process in a timely fashion so that it applies next year.
And
Right.
that is one piece I neglected to mention. This is subject to permissive referendum. So we will need to adopt a local law at the November board meeting in order to have this in place for next year.
We need to adopt it in November. So backing up, we should do something at the October board meeting.
You could do the October board meeting. I believe we have a separate board meeting for the budget. That thought popped into my head this morning. Haven't talked to anybody about it, but you do have 2 board meetings between now and the November board meeting.
Okay. All right. Good. Craig, Supervisor Leggett. You need.
Thank you. To follow up on Supervisor Thomas's question, the Glens Falls goes by wards. I understand that Queensbury has wards as well. What if Queensbury were to go proportionately by their ward systems instead of having 4 supervisors all equally representing everybody, that they went to wards? Would that simplify things at all for us?
Those decisions are going to be made at the local level as to how the Glens Falls or how Queensbury chooses to make those decisions. I don't think the county has the power to dictate that. What the county has to do is to run these scenarios with the supervisors and ensure that it abides by one man, one vote.
Well,
One person,
yeah.
one vote.
I mean, like Supervisor Thomas said, there's 5 of us Glens Falls supervisors on the board and no mayor, but we represent our constituents well without having the mayor on the board. And all 5 of us, I mean, I guess if the city wanted to go to 3, that would have to be their decision. Treasurer Swan?
Yeah, just as a point of information, when Queensbury went to the ward system, and I don't remember how long ago it was maybe 12, 15 years ago, something like that. The decision was made by the voters that the county representation would still be at large and that the ward system would affect only the town board. So I'm assuming, like in the city, that if the town was to change that, it would have to be a town decision, not the county. I don't think the county can tell the town how their supervisors are set up. But I remember specifically when the ward system was set up by the vote of the people, the county representation was at large.
Supervisor. What did he say? I'm sorry. What did you say, Supervisor Leggett?
We can always urge them.
We can also urge going to a legislature. Supervisor Sieber, Chairwoman Sieber.
I'm happy to have this information ahead of time. I know we have another personnel and finance meeting next week. And as Administrator Moore pointed out, several board meetings before having to get this done. I think public input's going to be really important. It sounds like both in the city of Glens Falls, to Supervisor Thomas's point, and in the town of Queensbury. Administrator Moore and I both asked Commissioner Vaness, and I don't believe Commissioner McLaughlin was in that day, but to look a little bit deeper into what it means, where the changes get made in terms of the ward versus the at-large. And there was a memo done on this a long time ago. I've asked our Administrator Moore to work with our county attorney's office to find that memo. And that was done at my request years ago on how ward systems work versus at-large for the town of Queensbury. I know we've had some discussions with our councilman at the town of Queensbury on this. They've been supportive of a ward system in the past. I remain supportive of that. I think that Supervisor Leggett brings up a really good point that perhaps if it's the will of the board to ask by resolution to the town of Queensbury to consider a ward system, there's a long process for that. And that might be something if we go to the 6th supervisor scenario. But I do think the public's going to need to weigh in, and the town hopefully will be receptive to whatever suggestions come out of this board. But that won't even be applicable for, I'm sure, 2 years. As Mike said, I think it has to go on to a ballot. But anyway, a lot of those questions are being asked, and I would hope our administrator will get out those details to us when he has them.
Okay, are there any further questions on the math itself? Okay, I'd like to wrap up this. I think the math is very straightforward. Once you walk us through all the different columns and understanding the background calculations in there. So I think we'll move on from that discussion today. Talk to your constituents, and let's come back ready probably for more discussion at the next personnel meeting, which is next week, a week from today. All right, very good. Before we go into executive session, I thought we'd check with Treasurer Swan, see if he has anything to bring to us today for personnel items pending.
As far as item number 1, I'm still waiting on civil service to come back with a reclassification workup that they've done. Item number 2, I'm not really sure where we're at with that because we haven't had a meeting on it in quite some time. So
Okay.
I don't have an answer for you.
Yeah, that's on me too, Mike. Let's make sure that we talk about that and figure out what we're doing.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, you want to, yeah. Okay, so I think really you'll see the positions authorized for filling by the standing committees are all on there. And I'll take privilege of the floor or public comment at this time. There's no public here in the meeting room. Mr. Lehman, is there anything on YouTube? Okay.
Hello, we do not have any comment on YouTube.
Okay, so at this time, we'll go into executive session, and then when we come out, the only item will most likely be to adjourn the meeting, just for the public's information. Treasurer Swan, if you want to stay, that's fine, I believe, unless anyone objects once we get into executive session. We'll take, could I have a motion to go into executive session to discuss personnel matters, including the county attorney position? Thank you, Supervisor McGowan. Second, Supervisor Garrity. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye.